I was the sole mourner at my spouse's burial. Neither our boy nor our girl appeared, nor did any of the little ones they brought into the world. It was only me, positioned near the casket as a biting gust, sliced across the small churchyard, as though nature itself refused to linger in such emptiness. The undertaker shifted uneasily, his gaze darting from the rows of vacant pews to my expression. He coughed lightly, then repeated the gesture. "Shall we hold off a bit longer, Mrs. Whittaker?" "No," I replied, "proceed." Edward would have despised any postponement. He adhered to schedules rigidly in his final months, dispensing medications precisely on time, tuning into the nightly broadcast at exactly 7, arranging his bedroom shoes parallel before retiring. A person of routine, a person of honor, and now a person interred in solitude. I occupied the foremost bench, surrounded by 4 unoccupied spots on either side. The minister delivered verses from the Bible with little passion. The arrangements of blooms seemed overly vivid, the enclosure excessively gleaming. My mind kept returning to how Edward might have chuckled at the extravagance, then scanned the area with a scowl, demanding to know the whereabouts of our offspring. Where had they gone? A notification arrived that dawn. Our boy James dispatched a brief note. "Regrets, mother." An issue arose. Unable to attend. Nothing further. No ring. I pictured him in his workplace, or perhaps teeing off with business associates, acting as if the occasion held no significance, as if his dad's passing was merely a minor interruption in an overloaded agenda. Our girl, Laura, sent nothing at all. She had left a voice message 48 hours prior, light and carefree like a summer breeze. "Mother, I truly cannot rearrange my salon visit, and you know the anxiety it causes me to shuffle plans. Convey to father that I'll stop by shortly." Shortly, as though those who have departed linger for appointments. Following the rite, I trailed the carriers in isolation. Tears did not come. Not from a lack of sorrow. I had been mourning for ages, but because certain griefs burrow so profoundly that they remain immobile within, akin to a ship's anchor. On that afternoon, I was already submerged beneath its mass. The burial ground lay almost abandoned. A single elderly caretaker observed from afar, palm on his shovel. The enclosure descended, the invocations murmured softly. Soil encountered timber. Earth encountered hush. I lingered after the rest departed. My shoes sank faintly into the ground, and I sensed the breeze tugging at my overcoat. The marker would arrive subsequently. For the moment, a modest sign bore Edward's details. Edward Whittaker, cherished partner, parent, overlooked. The term lodged in my thoughts like a pebble in footwear. Overlooked. Returning to our residence, the stillness thundered. His favorite armchair remained undisturbed, his shoes aligned, the viewing device controller exactly as he abandoned it. I gazed at it extensively. Then I proceeded to the cooking area, uncorked a fine vintage from the shelf reserved for visitors, and filled a tumbler. I retrieved my device and accessed a social platform. I rarely browse, but an instinct urged me to check. Laura's page was open to all, naturally. She had uploaded 90 minutes earlier an image of herself with 2 companions, glasses raised, beaming widely. Naughty ladies gathering, endless bubbly drinks, embracing our finest moments. James had shared as well. A capture of the fairway, his recent club shining under sunlight, impressive strike, ideal conditions, agreements sealed. I fixed on the display until it smudged. Then I powered it down, sipped again, and focused on the framed memory on the partition. Edward and I marking our 40th year together, beside the flower beds he cultivated manually. They once flourished in scarlet. Now they stood barren. In the morning, I resolved, I'll contact the attorney. I'll alter matters discreetly, with the grace Edward embodied throughout his existence. For if I alone honored his farewell, I alone would execute his desires, and theirs. That dusk, I remained solitary in our dining space, the very spot where Edward would pare fruits with meticulous care, dividing them into even arcs and presenting them on a dish. He invariably reserved the finest segment for me.
The physician
the portion
passed me a
kissed most
discreet
by
message
daylight,
that simply
he
stated,
termed it.
avoid returning
Presently,
to your residence.
the container of
Flee
produce went
immediately.
ignored, a
That
few
evening,
wilted
I
apples drooping
uncovered
from
that
their
my
heft.
closest relatives
The absence
were
of
scheming
sound
to
wasn't
place
novel.
me in an assisted
Edward had
living
vanished
facility
nearly a
to
fortnight
seize all
before
my
the rite,
possessions.
and those
Yet,
intervals had
they
begun
were
instructing
unaware
me
that I
in the
possessed a hidden
contours of
truth
isolation.
capable of transforming their
Yet
existence
this night,
entirely.
it bore down fiercer,
My name
more
is
resonant,
Evelyn Harper,
more unforgiving.
and I am 70
My
years
thoughts
young.
fixated on the
For
bare
45
seats,
years,
on Laura's lack
I
of
believed
communication,
I had nurtured
or
a
its
devoted
void.
son.
I had nurtured
Thomas
a daughter
entered my world
capable
at the tender
of
age
observing
of 2,
her dad's
a
descent
forsaken
into
child
earth
whom
from the
my late
ease of a
husband
social
and I
meal.
welcomed through adoption.
Had my guidance
With
faltered,
boundless
or had she
affection, I
forsaken an
provided
inner
him with
quality
every
beyond
opportunity,
retrieval?
a solid
James's missive
education,
lingered,
endless warmth,
devoid
and
of
countless
marks,
acts of
devoid of
devotion.
affection,
When my
merely a
husband
blunt
departed this
dismissal
life a
in
decade
ink,
ago,
an issue arose.
Thomas became my sole
Was it
kin,
remorse,
alongside
apathy,
his
or a
spouse
subtle
Lydia and
harshness
my
one
granddaughter
fails to
Sophia.
identify until retrospect?
However, on that ordinary
I filled
Tuesday,
another tumbler,
amid what
not
was
from
meant
despair,
to be a standard medical checkup,
but from lucidity.
my reality shattered.
I traversed
Dr.
the corridor
Harold
to our
Bennett,
sleeping
my
quarters,
long-standing and reliable
accessed
doctor,
the upper compartment of
conducted the
Edward's
examination as
workstation.
usual,
His
yet
items
demeanor
stayed
struck me
methodical as ever.
peculiar.
Pouches,
His fingers
duplicate
quivered faintly
openers,
while
an
measuring
ancient
my pulse,
collection of
and he refrained
adhesives.
from meeting
I
my
extended
gaze.
past the
All
documents
appears
and extracted the
excellent, Mrs.
binder
Harper.
concealed at the
He
rear.
declared, his tone
Slim,
laced with
orderly,
tension.
fastened
Your
with an
test
elastic.
results are impeccable.
Marked possessions.
Your vitality remains
Contained were
robust.
duplicates of our
You possess
testament,
numerous
a roster
vibrant
of
years
recipients.
ahead. As I prepared
Directives
to
for the
depart,
dwelling,
he approached
the
stealthily
vehicle,
from
the holdings, even the
In a
vintage
swift
timepiece
motion,
Edward's
while I
ancestor
retrieved my
carried from
handbag,
overseas.
Dr. Bennett
all
slipped
prepared,
a small, folded sheet
examined
into
by
its
our
depths.
counsel 20,
The action was so
4
subtle,
months
I
prior
nearly
with affection
overlooked
and
it.
prudence.
Stay well,
I
Mrs.
perched on the
Harper.
bed's border
He murmured
and
with a
unfolded the
strained grin.
binder.
And
James
bear in
appeared
mind,
as joint
kinfolk
recipient
aren't
of the
always
primary
as they
savings
appear.
fund, harboring
remark
almost
chilled me to the core.
$400,000
What could he
amassed through
possibly
decades of
imply?
labor and
Why
modest
deliver
decisions.
such a covert
He and
warning
Laura
now?
both featured
I
in the
exited
residence
the clinic
conveyance
with
section.
my pulse racing.
Even the
resolving
Riverside
to
retreat,
examine the message
seldom
only
visited
upon
yet
reaching
inquired
home.
about during
En route
Livy's,
in the
was
taxi,
designated for
myriad
them.
speculations
I
flooded
clutched
my
the
thoughts.
sheets, my digits
Dr.
quivering,
Bennett had
not
always
from
been
years,
a
but from a
steadfast,
profounder
expert
source.
professional,
Deception
acquainted with our
pulses,
household
and mine
since
reverberated
Thomas's
in my
adolescent
auditory
years.
senses.
Why
I
this
stood and
enigmatic
approached the
behavior
storage,
suddenly?
withdrawing a
Upon
fabric
arriving
container.
at the dwelling, Thomas
Within
lounged
lay
in the
ancient
sitting
captures,
area with Lydia and
clan
Sophia.
assemblies, anniversaries,
They conversed
festivities.
in muted whispers, ceasing
Edward
abruptly
cradling
at my
the young
entrance.
ones,
Lydia clutched
myself on the
various
veranda
documents,
chuckling,
hastily
Laura
concealing
pulling
them
my
behind
garment,
her.
James
How did the
dozing on
checkup go,
Edward's
Mother?
knee.
Thomas
A volume
inquired,
splayed
his
over his
smile
torso.
failing to warm his eyes.
We once formed a unit.
Quite well, dear.
Perhaps
The
I had
physician
been overly
confirmed my
trusting to
excellent
miss the
condition.
drift. Perhaps affection
I responded,
erodes not in
striving
tempests,
for composure.
but fades as
Lydia
coatings
shot
under
Thomas
rays.
a glance I couldn't ignore.
Silently,
Why
until the design
apparent
becomes
letdown?
unfamiliar.
Were they
I selected a
anticipating
capture of
news
Edward and
ailment?
James angling.
Wonderful, grand.
James around 11.
Sophia chimed
Edward's
in,
limb
her
encircling
words
him,
oddly detached.
gesturing toward the stream,
It signifies
his grin ample and
time
tender.
for personal enjoyment.
That individual merited beyond a
evening
vacant
over
sanctuary.
supper,
I
their
replaced the
conduct
capture.
grew increasingly
Then I
bizarre.
grasped the communicator.
Thomas uttered
Approaching
scarcely
midnight,
a word to
yet
me.
indifference gripped
Lydia
me.
replied
I
in
dialed
clipped
Robert
phrases,
Ellis,
and
our
Sophia
counsel.
evaded
It
my
directed
stare.
to recording,
And palpable
anticipated.
strain hung in the
I conveyed
atmosphere,
regardless.
thick as fog.
Robert,
Is aught
May
amiss?
Whittaker here.
I
Urgent
eventually
testament
probed.
revision
Nay,
required.
mother, all is
Reach
well.
me at dawn.
Thomas answered
I concluded
swiftly.
and paused lengthy by
Merely
the pain.
fatigued.
Moon glow
Post-meal,
brushed
I
the
retreated
summits
to my
of the
chamber
flower
with a
stems
burdened
exterior.
spirit.
They had
Clearly,
declined since
something
Edward's
brewed, and the
departure,
doctor's missive
not
began
from
to
inattention,
resonate.
but in
With
empathy.
unsteady fingers,
I recognized
extracted
pruning
the
was
paper
due,
from my bag
granting
and
renewal
unfolded it.
space.
The contents
But not this
stole
eve.
my breath.
This
Mrs.
eve I
Harper,
permitted
your
age
kin
leaves to
visited
descend.
yesterday.
In the
Lydia
morn I would
inquired
commence
about
excising
your
the
cognitive
extraneous.
health, and whether
The
I
council's
could affirm
chamber
the need for
evoked aged
specialized
volumes and
oversight.
herbal sheen,
They intend
where
to
duration seemed
institutionalize you
compacted
in a care
and quietude carried
They
gravity.
also probed regarding your
Robert
estate
Ellis
and
had acquainted
holdings.
us for
Avoid
over
home,
3
flee,
decades.
Dr. Bennett.
He managed
My
our
limbs
initial
trembled
loan,
violently, my
Edward's
own
enterprise
blood.
permit,
The lad I
the
reared
retreat
with profound
title,
tenderness,
and ultimately
the
our
in-law I
possession
embraced
scheme.
as daughter.
Reliable,
The grandchild grandchild I cherished
and like
beyond
myself,
measure.
wary of those who
Abruptly,
grinned for
the odd
gain.
glances,
He glanced
hushed
upward from his
talks,
station as
and
I
shrouded
entered,
papers
rising with
crystallized.
mild astonishment.
Their dismay
May,
stemmed
he
not
uttered,
from my
securing
wellness,
his outer
but
garment.
from the doctor's refusal
Early arrival.
to aid their
It
scheme.
demanded immediacy.
Sleep
I responded,
eluded me that
easing
night.
into the cushioned
Each
seat
household
across.
creak jolted me
My
awake.
wrap retained
I
faint garden
reclined in
aroma.
vigilance,
I had
pondering
trimmed
how
lifeless stems that
circumstances had
dawned
led here.
prior to morning
How
repast.
could those for whom
Trimming
I
always
forfeited
grounded
all
me.
now plot
Honesty
against me?
in severing the
Around
non-serving.
2 in the morning,
Your recording
murmurs
reached me,
emanated
Robert
from the
noted,
cooking area.
resuming. Testament
I rose
revision.
quietly,
Indeed,
inching
I
toward my
affirmed.
door. Thomas,
Exclude
Lydia,
James and Laura
Sophia's
completely.
voices carried
He halted,
softly
not
yet
startled, but
discernibly.
considerate.
That blasted
Certain.
physician
I
declined.
met his stare.
Lydia
I
fumed
entered my
quietly.
partner solitary.
I detailed
our
how
offspring
the elderly
absented.
woman is
No
deteriorating
contact,
mentally,
no tribute.
forgetting
Occupied.
faces
I
at
positioned
times,
palms
leaving
composed on the
appliances
surface.
unattended.
They merit nothing.
But he maintained
Robert
her
nodded
soundness.
gradually.
Calm
Amendment
yourself,
drafting
darling.
then.
Thomas
Total exclusion
soothed.
from all clauses.
Another practitioner
Affirmative.
will comply with
Holdings
the necessary
dwelling
signatures.
retreat all. Comprehended.
What of her meantime?
He initiated a
Sophia
notepad,
queried.
scripting in
I've
neat
secured
strokes.
my university
Redirect to
placement
another.
overseas.
I contemplated
Funds are
Nathan,
required
my
promptly,
grandson, Laura's
not
lad,
in half
the
a
soul
decade
who
upon
visited
her
Sans
natural
motive,
passing.
who cleared my
Sophia
paths in summer heat
refrained from
unprompted,
such speech.
stating I ought not
Thomas
exert
chided
outdoors.
mildly,
Who
lacking
delivered
fervor.
reading materials
Yet
and
you're
sought my
correct.
views.
Swift action
Who
is
once
essential.
declared,
The
grandmother,
residence alone
conversing with
nears
you surpasses
600,000,
peers. I
plus her
inhaled.
annuity
Indeed,
and reserves we
establish a
sustain
fund for
comfortably
Nathan.
until her
Residence,
demise.
retreat,
Lydia
estate
concluded
balance to
icily,
him, structured
I
securely
didn't enter this
beyond
union
parental
to tend a
grasp.
frail elder,
Feasible,
she
Robert
added.
stated with arid
I wed
expertise I
anticipating
valued.
prompt inheritance,
Irrevocable
but a
fund in
decade
Nathan's
on,
designation.
she's depleting
Restricted
what should
full
be
entry
ours.
until 30.
Ours.
Save learning
I
or
echoed
wellness
inwardly,
needs. Suitable,
fury igniting
ideal.
within.
We devoted
Earnings
the
from my
subsequent
and my
60 minutes
husband's toil.
scrutinizing
They
specifics,
claimed as
sheet upon
entitlement.
sheet, term
Tomorrow
upon
I'll
term.
consult the attorney.
I remained steadfast,
Thomas proceeded.
having supported a casket
Inquire
solo
if
and
incompetence
stood
can
by a
be
pit sans
declared
offspring.
sans
Documents
medical
posed
input.
no threat. Triviality
Alternatives
couldn't penetrate
exist.
posts that.
Failing that,
Nearing conclusion,
Lydia
Robert regarded
interjected.
anew.
We render
May,
her
permit
existence
observation.
unbearable until
This
she
rarity
opts
at
for
your
the facility
stage.
voluntarily.
Many ought pardon.
Remove
harmony.
her entertainment
I preserved
devices,
harmony 8
withhold
decades.
meals,
I
regard
murmured.
her as the
It
encumbrance
entombed me
she is.
preceding Edward.
Mother,
no
that's
further
harsh.
inquiries.
Sophia
Departing,
protested,
sunlight
then
extended
appended,
sidewalks.
though truthfully,
I paused
feigning
exterior,
affection wearies
absorbing
me.
late autumn
She's
breeze.
perpetually
Not
intrusive,
mournful,
questioning
no
our
longer
late
irate,
returns,
merely concluded.
unendurable.
Concluded
My knees
anticipating
weakened.
offspring to
Bracing
evolve
against the
unintended.
wall, I sensed
Concluded
my
equating
foundation
responsibility
crumbling.
with affection.
These individuals,
Concluded
for whom I
dispensing
labored
cardiac drafts,
exhaustingly in
expecting
Thomas's
reciprocity,
youth,
save
abandoning
muteness.
aspirations,
My strides resounded
companions,
returning to
personal
vehicle.
fulfillment.
The cushion
Recall
warmer
my
customary.
16th celebration.
I lingered, grips on
Sophia
steering,
persisted.
observing passers-by.
She gifted that
a lady with
ghastly
her
purple
child,
frock,
clasping
insisting
palms,
I don
exchanging
it.
mirth.
Peers
no
mocked
envy,
relentlessly.
merely registered.
Thence I
akin to a
vowed
former melody,
retribution.
enjoyed yet retired.
What irks me most,
that night,
Lydia
slumber sans viewing,
contributed,
sans
is
tone,
her
sans
perpetual
Edward's
boasting
garment
of
folded
maternal
adjacent
excellence.
as post-clinic.
Her vast
Stillness
sacrifices
persisted,
for Thomas,
yet painless
portraying
now.
sanctity.
The archival unit in
Reality,
passage held
adoption
trio
stemmed
compartments,
from infertility.
inscribed in Edward's
He merely
firm
filled
script.
her void.
Dwelling,
Cease.
duties, kin,
Thomas uttered
final
wearily,
mine. I
sans
unlatched
outrage.
gradually, alloy
In
protesting
7 days,
faintly,
I'll broach
reluctant
it,
surrendering
propose an
specters.
appealing care
Within,
residence,
binders
ideal
galore,
for peers her
invoices,
age,
check replicas,
rejection triggers
correspondence from
alternative
institutions,
measures,
festive greetings amid
alternative,
agreements.
Sophia pressed,
I retained all,
induced
not
genuine
fixation,
instability,
but faith and
Thomas
transparency.
replied frigidly,
Documents
alter
truthful, drawer
prescriptions,
sufficient, ignite
misplace
blaze.
items,
I
accuse
settled at
falsely of
dining
actions
surface,
undone.
position James,
Soon any
learning
examiner
and venture
deems her
aside,
unfit.
unveiled Laura,
Horror struck
residence
like
and
lightning.
existence, my
They
script.
sought not merely
Teddier
theft,
formerly
but
legible
erosion
still.
of my intellect,
Commenced
honor,
perusing
rationality,
15,000 draft
molding me into their
2004.
fabricated image.
Laura's Union.
Flawless,
Desirable
Lydia
site.
exclaimed eagerly.
Site boasted crystal
Commitment grants
fixtures,
account
seafood
access.
ensemble.
Liquidate the home,
7,800
claim annuity,
shift
manage all
2008.
unhindered.
Structure
Précis
seat.
precisely.
Mother. Infants
Thomas
rest
affirmed.
dampened. Dispatch
Externally,
promptly.
we're exemplary,
12,02012.
devotedly nursing
Ali
an
nurse for
ailing
Nathan.
matriarch.
5,000
Laughter
2014.
ensued.
Robotics
The trio
retreat desire.
chuckling as at
Significant
supreme
mother.
wit.
12
Mocking
months
my
later,
trust,
Laura
my
weeping
unwavering
post.
devotion.
Spouse dismissal.
In that instant,
Another
something
20,000.
fractured irreparably.
Unquestioned.
Not
You rescue
merely my
perpetually.
already wounded
She
heart,
breathed
but my
telephonically.
naive trust
Unknown
in
absence you.
benevolence,
I trusted.
reciprocity of affection,
James's binder
sanctity
denser.
of kinship.
20, 5,000
Dawn, duplicate her
inception for
payment
venture
cards.
dissolved
Lydia
half
murmured.
year. Edward
Incremental
cautioned
expenditures
against.
evade
Dispatched
notice.
regardless.
Approved.
Pre-owned
Thomas said,
transport.
I'll scour
Initial payment.
documents for a
Trio
modifiable
terms.
testament.
Advanced studies.
Modifiable Unverifiable
covered
how?
clinic for
Sophia
subsequent daughter
inquired.
birth. Coverage
Claim the
initial limb
confused elder
fracture.
bequeathed all
James
to us,
Tardy
her
duties,
sole
draft
caretakers.
unspoken.
Thomas
Examining
grinned
now,
audibly.
entry.
Father
Pondered
brilliant.
transformation to
Sophia
buffer.
admired.
Or
Caution
perpetual.
essential.
I overly
Suspicions
eager
and
in
none.
case drops.
Lydia
Never
assured,
refusal aid.
friendless,
Yet
kinless
refused
beyond
farewell
us,
to sire,
utterly
irreparable by
reliant, who
documents.
advocates,
Return
accurate.
binders save one.
Companions
Retain
faded
Nathan
amid my
pouch.
dedication
Within
to Thomas.
juvenile scrawl
No
age
siblings.
10.
Parents
Crooked
long
graphite
gone,
halved.
defenseless,
Grandmother May, gratitude
unbeknownst,
pancake
my
instruction.
concealed asset,
Deem you astute
poised to
humorous.
append dynamics.
Someday reciprocate
my
care.
husband's
Grip
passing
lengthy.
bequeathed
19
not
presently.
sole reminiscence,
Unsure recall
but
or
undisclosed
significance.
legacy.
I did. Intended equity,
$2,
uniform
5
division.
million in foreign
Conventional
reserves,
wisdom, correct.
plus 4
Equity
international
non-preference.
estates from
Yet
his
equity
ventures,
occasionally disparity.
concealed to ensure
Equity bestowing
Thomas's
heritage
affection
to
was
perceiver as
authentic,
person
fostering
non-reservoir.
self-reliance.
Edward stated,
now
heritage
folly
non-bequeathed,
evident. He awaited
to.
my demise
Formerly
for perceived
fiscal.
modest
Now
gains.
comprehended otherwise.
Consensus reached.
Dwelling diminished
Thomas
that day,
concluded,
not altered.
Initiate
I viewed
tomorrow,
sans
maintain
recollection
facade of
clutter.
affection.
Years preserved
Naturally,
every token offspring
Lydia
bestowed.
replied, masterful
Crafted
pretense,
greetings, paste
brief
frames,
endurance.
sparkling cups.
Footsteps receded.
Affection
I lingered,
non-objects.
paralyzed
Actions.
message gripped
Recently
tightly.
actions unified
Eating,
utility.
escaped
Non-value
not as
afternoon.
prey, but
Assembled
awakened
trio
from
cartons
decades
prior
illusion.
offerings.
Strategized
Non-discard. Yet
unparalleled
merely
reprisal.
area. Area
Sleepless
novel
yet
growth.
invigorated.
Night abstained
Swift,
vintage.
shrewd
Courage
action
surplus.
imperative.
Brood
They misjudged
infusion.
the feeble
Authentic.
elder,
Edward preferred.
awakening a
Loose
formidable
foliage.
force.
Proper vessel.
By
Infused
5,
precisely.
household slumber
Conveyed to lounge.
confirmed.
Limbs
I
beneath.
assembled
Earl
minimal
Grey aroma
valise.
gentle. Initial
Vital
tranquility
papers,
lengthy.
attire spares.
Summons post
remedies,
midday. Tone
crucially,
unfamiliar
the
months.
ledger
Gentle
detailing
hesitant.
covert funds.
Grandmother Nathan.
Prior
Closed account
departure,
before.
advantageous
Examined service
step,
closures retreat.
activated phone
James
recorder,
unused. Termed
feigning
resource.
retrieval,
Resource no
traversing
longer his.
near Thomas
Greeting.
and Lydia's
Precious. I
quarters.
uttered. Voice stable.
Predictably
All
alert,
well. Interval.
plotting.
Learned
Lydia discussed
grandfather.
card
Apologies.
replication.
Delayed
Thomas
contact.
legal consultation
Awaited
on
non-punish.
incapacity.
Required authenticity.
Suspicion. Lydia
Unaware
fretted,
demise until
improbable.
40.
Thomas
8 hours
dismissed.
passed.
Aged,
Nathan rapid.
gullible,
Mother withheld.
destinationless,
Stated ill
penniless,
non-departed.
friendless, were her
Remained
world.
motionless.
Pitiful,
Departed
Lydia
nearing
scorned.
21 days.
Septuagenarian,
Nathan aware.
wholly
He
dependent.
breathed.
Pity flickers,
Apologies.
then recalls her
Instant
chosen
muteness.
pathos.
Audibly
Chewing her
silence
marriage,
non-remorse
embodying
precisely
ideal
sorrow.
grandparent. Payment
Authentic,
due.
incapable
Thomas
imitation.
finalized isolate.
Desired visit
Ample
he appended.
evidence acquired.
Permissible
Stored
exhale.
device. Completed
Naturally.
preparations.
Arrived
Left
60
note on
minutes
counter.
subsequent.
Errands
Loftier
await.
recalled.
Return
Slight
soon,
stubble.
Evelyn.
Faint pure attire
Unsuspecting.
exertion
Strategic
scent.
flight.
Embraced
Unforeseen for
youthful
demented.
uncertainty welcome.
Matron.
Limb
Taxi
tentative.
to local
Fully
branch.
upon non-withdrawal.
Wednesday dawn.
Non-withdrew.
Hours before alarm.
Lounged.
Withdrew
Dispensed
substantial
citrus drink.
currency.
Surveyed
Confirmed
residence
hidden
familiar
assets
yet
secure.
altered. Grief
Teller,
thus
youthful
presumed.
Emily,
Identify
eyed
all
curiously at
non-identical realm.
$6.60.
Omitted
Your
right,
zero
he stated.
request.
Eternal
Certain,
self-pardon
madam,
absence.
risky carrying
Non-selector
such
I
sum.
tender. Regarded
Absolutely.
genuinely.
I affirmed.
Mother truly absent.
Urgent private
Affirmed
affairs.
singly. Muteness.
Subsequently,
Gazed coaster beneath
cab to
tumbler.
Metropolis's
Digit tracing
premier
worn
lodge,
border.
the regal
Stated
pinnacle.
labor. He eventual.
Required secure
Managed.
haven for
Outknown
scheming.
superior.
Discreet,
Aware presently
luxurious,
desire act.
privacy
He upright.
assured.
Honor him. View.
Receptionist,
Any?
poised
Acting.
mid,
I stated.
40s Clara,
Present.
queried
Appeared
duration,
unconvinced. Paused.
uncertain,
Rose.
weak
Returned
months,
envelope. Within
hinges
fund
on
documents.
familial
Unsigned.
resolutions,
Unsubmitted.
nodded
Authentic. Delayed
comprehendingly,
institution.
allocated 12th
Desired Nathan
floor
visage
suite.
prior extended.
Elevator, ascent,
Unveiled.
blended
Forehead
dread
creased.
and thrill.
Scanned initial.
Autonomous
Alarmed
choices,
gaze.
decades
Grandmother this.
absent.
Scheme.
Sweet,
I simple.
magnificent.
Dwelling. Retreat.
Expansive,
Savings.
panoramic
Indeed.
urban
Why
vista.
myself? Tone
Tasteful
fractured.
furnishings.
Non-mother Uncle
amenities
James.
abundant.
Could enumerate
Sofas sunk,
absences,
emotions
severities,
cascaded.
festivities,
Wept for
excuses,
45
selected
years
alternate
lavished
verity,
on
deserving
ungrateful
soul,
son,
return
for unnoticed
unsummoned,
degradations,
fixed
for
documents,
pre-grandmother
lowered tender
self,
fearing
vibrant
fracture,
and aspirational.
unknown utterance,
Tears
breathed,
expended,
unnecessary,
resolved, extracted
recall
ledger,
identity,
listed
authentic
priorities,
affection appearance,
alert overseas
oculars
advisors,
moist,
engage
wiped
elite
cuff
counsel,
juvenile tear
retain
concealment,
sleuth for documentation.
lounged lengthy unspoken,
Afternoon
merely
2,
existing,
Thomas phone,
Edward I dusk,
mother
duo
location,
air unfilled
past
closeness,
noon, absent,
departing, Nathan
worry
pivoted
veiled
entrance,
irritation,
weekend return,
well,
pancake
son,
renewal,
self,
grinned
day
fully
claim,
tender initial
long
days,
overdue,
employ
self,
premium topping,
day, clarify,
Laura manifested
precise
subsequent
whereabouts,
dawns, anticipated
annoyance
non-longing,
evident,
non-solis,
urban errands,
ceased response
fret not,
communications,
return
arrived
concluded.
unannounced, dark
Uncharacteristic,
conveyance, gravel
always
rapid,
informed,
tardy superior,
Lydia, Sophia anxious,
non-rap,
disclosure
entered
required,
habitual residence,
panic
partial hers
detected,
ethereal,
not welfare
mother
control
uttered,
slippage.
lowering vast
Thomas
satchel passage
70
surface,
entitles autonomy,
attempts contact,
silence, mother
non-rose,
alarming, unlike
folded
you,
attire
medications
gradual,
adhered,
intentional
seed,
pairing foot coverings
Sewing
paramount
strategy
duty.
initiated.
Occupied, I
Optimal
stated.
sun,
Sneered gentle.
unprecedented
Occupation,
vitality.
non-response.
Hung up, powered off.
Entered
Anticipated
cooking.
barrage.
Self-served hydration
Tranquility
unqueried.
needed.
Propped
Afternoon
counter
retained top
proprietress.
firm. Lead
thus
50s
uttered,
Victor Langford
accurate regarded,
personally received
reference,
upon
digit
fee
rhythm
mention.
tumbler, Nathan
Detailed
stated will
conspiracy
alteration,
played Dawn
sees James
recordings,
myself,
gravity
indeed,
deepened,
Laura chuckled
grave
brief
Mrs.
accurate
Harper,
earnest,
elder
post
mistreatment,
contributions
fraud
yours,
plot, potential
regarded
forgery,
now, cease fold,
criminal pursuit
palms
viable,
motionless, father right
precisely
absent,
desired,
Laura, tribute
strategic,
absent, contact
excruciating.
absent, even inquiry
Langford
absent,
smirked appreciatively.
scheduling, indeed
Harmonious
interrupted,
collaboration ahead.
Salon then
Full
gathering,
disclosure
viewed
requisite.
images, flashed
Recounted
non-denial,
adoption, sacrifices,
contributions discussion,
secret wealth,
persisted,
all, noted
dispatched
meticulously,
lists procurement,
asset totals,
invoices,
$2,
education remittances,
5
loan
million
pleas,
liquid,
dispersed
properties
silent
valuing
unqueried,
1,
kinship,
8
she
million
retorted,
additional.
mutual aid,
Paused,
negative, I
regard
gentle,
elevated,
maternal
empowered
decades,
individual,
muteness,
underestimated,
sire constructed
leverage for
residence
lifelong
manual,
lesson.
limited,
Genuine
pride ample,
smile emerged,
instructed
arsenal
esteem
acquired,
action measured,
evening
non-verbiage
sweet,
you unable
bound,
duo hours
reactivated
adieu,
device,
unjust,
40,
correct floor
2
gaze,
missed
thus
from Thomas,
exclusion,
18 Lydia,
abrupt,
10 Sophia.
negative, I
Text
stayed abrupt,
escalated
prior duo
desperation.
decades dispense
Mother
non-receipt,
respond, deep
partner
concern.
entered solitary,
Evelyn
pit side
silence
awaited
prompts
offspring,
authorities.
absent,
Grand whereabouts,
non-abrupt,
father warns
existence
trouble.
span,
Replied
limbs
Thomas
crossed,
solely.
composure attempt,
Fine,
oral
return
tense,
prepared.
chastising,
Instant,
negative,
mother
Laura,
abnormal.
liberating
Homeward
self-bestowing
now,
Nathan,
Lydia
silence
prepared
dense,
favorite,
anticipated
fabricated,
weep,
post-decade,
anticipated
Lydia
yell,
never catered
instead satchel
specially,
retrieval, hope
manipulation
potency
anew,
sensation, she
following
uttered,
Morn,
shade
Langford
adjustment,
rang. Mrs.
negative,
Harper,
I
pivotal
serene,
findings.
tranquility, departed
Investigator
wordless,
uncovered Lydia's
awaited conveyance
unauthorized
retreat
credit
prior trust
applications in your
documents,
name.
dining surface,
6
folded
months
attire
ongoing.
aside,
Indignation
dusk,
surge.
missive threshold,
6 cards,
non-post,
$52,
non-wrap, crease
0.
smudge, comprehend
0
not
debt.
equilibrium,
Lavish boutiques,
attempted optimum,
fine dining,
possible
Caribbean
failure,
getaway
exclusion,
last fortnight.
non-resolution,
I eschewed
perused twice,
Caribbean,
halved,
bewildered.
miscellaneous
They
compartment,
vacationed,
presently,
citing
merely
Lydia's ailing
document,
kin.
overdue belated,
Recollections
James
sung,
subsequent,
tearful
non-intrusion
plea,
Laura,
funded
rap
generously
duo
atop
pause
thefts.
repeat.
Further,
Unlatched gradual
Thomas
aware
unemployed
non-solitary
9 months,
correct, posterior
subsisting on
Victoria
your means.
spouse, rigid grin
Contacted
costly
4
rap weather,
physicians for dementia
nodded acquaintance
certification.
favor.
Stabs
Mother,
deepened.
James stated tone serene
Granddaughter
rehearsed.
Sophia,
Entry,
3
a
month
sidestep,
gestation,
surveyed
concealing
residence
paternity,
exhibition existence
50
unrecognized,
year wedded
guided
paramour,
lounge,
now
outer garments
renouncing.
retained.
Deity's
Laura Nathan
scandalous
intelligence,
potential ruin.
he initiated.
More, Lydia's
Presume.
biennial tryst
Throat
with neighbor
clearance.
Edward.
Misunderstanding
Proof abundant,
perceived.
irony crushing.
Muteness.
Accusing my
Victoria
instability
limbs
amid
crossed
their
elegant,
deceptions.
finger gems
Document
afternoon
all,
gleam,
confront with
comprehend
irrefutable.
challenging period
Proposal,
may, sentiments
deeper
elevated post
self-entrapment.
lost, regarded,
Afternoon,
right absent likewise
self-rejuvenation.
flashed,
Acquired
client banquet,
elegant
crucial
attire.
agreement,
Sapphire
global
gown,
James
crimson,
shifted,
amber
mother,
silk
attend,
evoking authority.
oat contacted,
Accessories,
ode attended,
salon
unknown manner,
transformation.
thought perhaps,
Stylist
negative
Mia,
interrupted,
hours laboring.
thought perhaps
Lovely
prolonged ignore
tresses,
alternate
why
sorrow,
neglected.
averted,
Believed self,
awaited,
hair
persisted,
superfluous, role
constructed
solely
chamber sire
supportive.
manual solitary
Era
descent
concluded,
pit, singular
regal
absent,
emergence,
oral
mirror
opened,
revealed
Victoria
stranger,
Pomni,
sophisticated
signal,
bob,
articulate permission,
luminous
comprehend
accents, empowered
disturbance, she
visage.
stated, entitlement
Dinner, lodge,
alteration,
eatery, phone,
rationalize,
Thomas, mother,
Nathan
finally,
juvenile,
absence,
19
fury
indeed,
dominant,
inexperienced,
self, nurturing,
trust
son,
property management
revelatory
unknown,
hiatus,
manipulation
cease,
possible, brow
family
arched,
rights
whom,
entail knowledge,
Victoria
rights,
unflinched,
since familial
acquaintances
dominion,
aware inheritance
erratic
value,
onset,
yourself pondered,
instability,
James
insinuation.
Retreat. Mother,
Erratic
aware
septuagenarian
disappointment,
respite,
aware
precedent
suboptimal
absent,
offspring, admit
specialist
extreme,
consultation
negative,
advised.
I gentle,
Indeed,
extreme
fraud,
sire
abuse,
abandonment,
manipulation,
extreme
experts,
existence
your
disposables,
specialties,
razors,
silence
swallowed
profound,
difficult,
discussing,
thus conclusion,
all
exclusion,
cards,
self-excluded,
incompetence plot,
merely
physicians,
recognition,
job loss,
Victoria
getaway
Rose,
thefts,
complication
court surprises,
potential may,
delusional,
legally, gaze
aid
met,
required,
negative,
delusional,
documentation
medication
pristine, counsel
swaps
proficient,
overheard.
reflection
Prolonged
time,
hush,
James aged
homeward,
recalled,
familial
temples slender,
discourse,
oculars vacant,
kinship
thought pardon,
dissolved, betrayal
indeed
precludes,
I stated, pardon
please,
non-entry,
confess,
non-disputed post,
apologize
rose
sincerely,
courtesy forced
restitute,
departed,
possible
post-closure,
mercy,
palm quiver,
nothing
non-dread,
confessable,
non-uncertainty,
tremble
liberation,
audible,
lounged pain
court
lengthy,
then.
ultimate
Farewell,
illumination sky
peace
drain,
enveloped,
stems near nude,
declaration issued,
winter
armament
proximate,
superior,
Edward
ensuing
utter
days
renew bloom,
tumultuous.
indeed
Please,
non-universal,
Sophia's tearful
institution
longing,
aroma
Lydia's
citrus
regretful
sanitation subdued
misunderstandings,
authority,
Thomas's
aged wealth
clarifications,
gradual motion, voices
shifted
elevated
intimidation,
none.
guardianship
Interior
threats
nearing
for
12 months
protection.
recalled. Mrs.
Langford
Whitaker,
prepped,
attendant
permit filing,
stated, upright
evidentiary
immediate.
gold.
Mr. Harlan
3
available
psychiatrists
shortly.
affirmed
Courteous
sanity.
nod awaited tall
Investigator
pains main
relentless,
path
daily
vista.
shocks. Thomas
Exterior
Bank intrusion
populous
attempt
errands,
repelled.
heads lowered,
Lydia
occupied.
vending antiques
Interior
online. Jewelry
motionless,
pawn
significant
thwarted.
imminent.
Sophia propagating
Mr. Harlan
Alzheimer's
David
tale,
emerged minute
soliciting care
subsequent,
funds.
keen customary
Climax,
tailored
nocturnal
attire,
rendezvous with
appeared
forger
perpetual
Marcus
spill
Reed,
absent,
underworld,
May.
notorious,
Warm greeting, calm
counterfeits,
shake,
plan,
message astonishment,
acceleration,
positive,
urged,
I
phase
stated.
two,
Astonishment beneficial.
Self-incrimination.
Grinned
Monday,
uncertain.
a
Guided
tired
chamber.
sapphire
Translucent
million
barriers.
plus property
Nutwood
tour.
station.
Agent
Singular
Daniel
frame Canadian.
greeted.
Edward
Investigator
appreciated.
orchestrated
Sincere
coincidence.
visage finance
Kin
chamber.
appearance. Mansion
Comprehend
midst
alterations.
familiar
He
voices.
stated unveiling
Excuse
account dossier.
descended.
Executed,
Trio
I
finery
replied.
pitching.
Ensure execution
Sale, mother's
sans
abode,
postponement.
ailing, proxy
Scanned
held.
annotations, browse
Documentation,
elevated
processing,
perusal, revoked
greetings,
linked
kin.
shifts, eliminated
Announced
James
descending,
Laura
horror
recipients,
cinematic.
established
Pallor,
irrevocable
muteness,
fund
recoil.
Nathan designation,
Purchasing evidently.
notable transition,
Daniel, acquainted,
notable female,
regrettably
I
relations.
stated, chuckled,
Discourse
indeed,
plea.
forward
Topics,
slight,
unauthorized
safeguards
vending,
desire David,
fictions, non-existent
unbreakable,
proxy.
non-contest,
Agent
non-kin agents
halted,
pressure half,
conflict
decade
precludes,
realization
mental
loss,
instability,
structurable prevention,
Lydia frantic,
disbursements
instability,
regulated,
acquiring
conditional learning
one,
residence wellness
8
30
million
post,
estate.
subsequent
Sophia
complete,
gasped, indeed, more affluent than imagined.
Guardian
Phoned
desire,
Langford,
negative, I
dispatched
stated Nathan
documentation,
advisor
awaited
optional,
arrival,
resolutions
approach
his,
rebuffed, Lydia's
trust
tears
exceeds
panic,
counsel,
accusations
non-insult
allied,
David
recording
Verity,
replayed, office
spectacles
aghast,
adjustment,
attorneys,
comprehend
notary
difficulty
arrived,
reversal,
no authority,
undesire
fraud, any
reversal,
attempt, humiliation
examined all,
inaugural.
inscriptions,
Street pursuit,
calendars,
please
ultimate
yells,
verifications,
Lydia, vindictive
constructive
crone,
sensation,
exploited us,
non-residence,
exploited
non-enterprise,
by labors,
subdued,
forfeitures,
resilient, limit guilt,
adoption
non-softened
voluntary,
duration,
gratitude eternal.
departing David
No
Palms folded
gratitude,
station,
cease theft, betrayal,
May permissible
sanity, assault.
inquiry,
Cab
inform
departed
non-concern,
amid curbside clamor.
negative, I
Afternoon,
stated,
Langford,
lucidity,
post-incident blunder.
nodded gradual,
Thomas paid
rarity,
$60,
negative,
zero.
I gentler,
Euro zero
belated,
advance, your cards
exterior
funding.
midday
Lead
illumination
federal
varied,
collaborator.
pure,
Audio
buoyant
visual
somehow,
evidence.
opposite
Sweet
Cafe Edward
individual
I post,
confrontations
errands
planned
frequented,
virtually.
years absent,
Streaming platform.
altered,
Elder
youth
exposes
personnel
kin
amplified
truths.
melody,
8
entered
sharp
regardless
commenced,
cappuccino
viewership
command,
surged, adoption
window
to
adjacent
warning,
lounge
frauds,
path
insanity
observation,
plots,
30ish
recordings,
female
proofs
past,
shared,
infant
support
conveyance,
flooded,
rap
mid,
wind fluttered,
streams, Sophia
exhausted,
called,
resolution
Gran
imbibed
Hall,
gradual,
ruining us,
communicator
ruined
absent,
mine
urgency
prior,
none,
public
Tumblr
shame
seat,
detailed,
60 minutes
hung
solely
up,
mine,
implicit admission,
stage existence
Thomas
subdued
raged,
asserted,
defamation
subdued
threats,
resonance tranquility
countered
experience,
with raid revelation,
Beatrice Thornton
federal
resided
probe,
duo residences
broken
distant
plea,
since 1973,
fixable, kinship,
non-intimate
criminal
confidentes,
syndicate,
a shared
not
sufficient
personal,
infusions traded
devastating,
perceptive fence
henceforth
glances mutinous
impersonal,
dialect,
stream ended
wrapped
8
5-ish,
0
bearing
0
containers
strong,
citrus biscuits,
viral dawn,
customary mild
supports
curiosity,
interviews,
James
peer
conveyance
tales,
yesterday
impactful,
witnessed, she uttered door
prevented similar
unlatched,
via
blooms or
inspiration,
pretexts,
Langford,
neither
read
I
arrest,
stated,
full
aside
confession,
entry,
including
conveyance spouse
forged
attire,
will, form, month
she uttered,
orchestration,
term saturated
afternoon,
condemnation,
Sophia,
lounged,
truth
dispensed
plea, cafe
infusion,
meet,
herbal
recorded,
hers,
initial
robust
luxury,
mind,
persuasion,
container
evolved
midst coffee
urgency,
surface,
post-lawn,
delayed
longevity,
unveiling,
realization,
awaited,
Thomas's
informed, I stated exclusion
120,
testament, Nathan's soul return
gambling
unprompted,
debts to peril,
Beatrice extended
Sophia's
exhalation,
role, funds for education,
overdue,
pregnancy
regarded,
concealed,
apologies
post,
may,
departure
she
chaos,
stated,
parental
tender,
blame,
observed,
scapegoat
pursued
planned,
approval
Rugg's
years,
allegation,
care
proofs
when personal
tendered,
consultations,
recordings,
drafts,
texts,
voyages,
alliance
grins,
proposed,
anniversary
testify
omissions,
for aid education,
pondered,
pregnancy
eventually
guidance,
fracture,
strength
thankful
tutelage,
occurred,
genuine bond
non-fracture, I
rekindled,
stated,
deal struck,
detached
trial
non-affection,
swift, ironclad
Beatrice
case,
grinned,
guilty plea
superior
advised,
expression,
refused,
mutinous
courtroom
instant,
thronged
auditory
media,
subtle cooler hum,
supporters,
periodic
prosecution
exterior gust,
masterful,
autumn
evidences
embedding,
presented,
aroma aged foliage
Sophia,
conclusion
testimony
brink, remorse,
damning, dignified
she eventual
cross-examination,
queried,
my
cranium
stand,
shake,
betrayals,
remorse delayed,
pain, liberation,
container unveiled
verdict,
finally,
guilty all,
biscuits
Thomas
flawless,
15 years,
crisp borders
Lydia
sugared,
12,
rich
additions,
tender midst,
post-trial,
each sampled,
justice
masticated,
legal,
reflective,
personal rediscovery,
acquaintance.
year
She
hence,
stated,
cozy
kin attempted
suburb
residence
home,
vending
garden
prior
haven.
spring.
Sophia
Excessive,
graduated
relocate
top,
elder
retained
community
child,
lakeside.
law studied,
All managed
elder
kin,
focused,
cleansing
regret,
repass,
non-adoption,
collective
delayed self-preservation
excursions.
awareness,
Response,
lessons, family
prefer
loyalty,
parish residence,
defined,
flawed
solitude,
cups,
dignified
personal
over
muteness,
treachery,
then exist
renewal
bleach others
timeless.
tedium.
Travels,
Chuckled pity
readings,
authentic upward
friendships,
stable
authentic
source.
Sophia bond,
Beatrice
prison
forward.
contacts discarded,
Ourselves,
gratitude,
generation endurance,
Venice bravery,
expense aware.
inner resilience,
Vertebrae
ending,
eroded.
as
Nurturing
commencements,
affection,
selective
measured
kindness,
presents
elder
gratitude
aid
voluntary.
foundation, self,
Affirmed,
love
non-merciless, may she appended. Accuse, murmur she severed offspring. Unspoken you sustained storms, they queried method, non-submerging. Blinked firm, nil descended. Conversed additional 60 minutes her plot, vicinity condition, rodents gnaw drainage anew. Departing, embraced extended customary. Night, abstained viewing. Extracted ancient missive Edward penned initial venture journey, compartment years unaccessed. May, residence never vacant you within. You ceiling planks, entrance latch, even unseen perception mine. Perused thrice prior envelope return. Residence subdued, non-vacant, presently. Initiated stroll, basic a notable deed. Myself initial sans tether another. Non-retrieve remedies, non-deliver baked, non-reclaim unborrowed plate. Merely desired ambulate. Dawn crisp, non-frigid, atmosphere honed pulmonaries, non-nip dermis. Donned Edward ancient gust shield, oversized, borders frayed, oddly soothed mass. Ambulated vicinity gradual, non-exertion, recalling ownership. Jenkins residence identical azure closures. Thompson's veranda oscillation creaked identical Edward utter. Repair ours prior descent.
That evening, I uncovered that my
Neither
closest
park,
relatives
perched
were
seat
scheming
beneath
to place
ancient
me
oak,
in an
fractured
assisted living
tempest
facility
2000,
to seize all
leaned
my
faint,
possessions.
obstinate vital.
Yet,
Path
they were
opposite,
unaware that
duo
I
youthful
possessed a
matrons
hidden
infant
truth
conveyances,
capable of
converse
transforming
slumber
their
instruction
existence
institutions,
entirely.
non-glance
My name
indifference,
is Evelyn Harper,
non-portion
and
realm
I am
theirs,
70 years
desired
young.
non,
For
female perched
45
seat distant,
years,
perhaps
I believed
40s,
I had nurtured a
exhausted
devoted
functional
son.
recall middle
Thomas
spans,
entered my
female
world
quintet
at the tender
inventories
age of
daily
2,
forgets chamber
a
entry
forsaken
purpose,
child whom my late
mutinous
husband
minutes.
and I welcomed
Then
through
she stated,
adoption.
non-regard,
With
frequent
boundless
here.
affection, I
Formerly,
provided him
I
with
stated,
every
prior
opportunity,
ceased requiring
a solid
transports
education,
baked,
endless
chuckled
warmth,
gentle,
and countless
pleasing
acts
sounds,
of devotion.
non-designation exchange,
When my husband departed
unnecessary,
this life a decade
head clearance
ago,
here,
Thomas became
stated,
my sole
offspring
kin,
yesterday stated
alongside
children
his spouse
undesired,
Lydia and my granddaughter
unsure
Sophia.
purpose perception,
However,
brows
on
elevated,
that ordinary
response,
Tuesday, amid
informed
what was meant
tattoos
to be a
quintet
standard
purpose
medical
unseen,
checkup,
self
my reality
retained,
shattered.
grinned.
Dr. Harold
Self-retained though
Bennett,
correct,
my long-standing
chuckled
and
freer
reliable
instant,
doctor, conducted
negative,
the examination
conversed
as usual,
quarter-hour
yet
trivial
his demeanor
paramount,
struck me as peculiar.
departed initial,
His
slight
fingers
wave,
quivered faintly
observed
while
vanish
measuring my
path bend,
pulse,
sensed
and he
odd
refrained
thoracic,
from meeting my gaze.
petite aperture,
All
prolonged
appears
iced portal
excellent,
crack,
Mrs. Harper.
night prepared
He
repast
declared,
solitary,
his tone laced with
non-rapid,
tension.
non-remnants,
Your test results
complete,
are impeccable.
surface
Your
arranged fine
vitality
porcelain,
remains
taper
robust.
ignited,
You possess
melody device
numerous
gentle
vibrant
rear,
years ahead.
identical outlet
As I
Edward
prepared to
favored,
depart,
despite
he
increased
approached
discourse
stealthily
melody
from behind.
presently, consumed
In a swift
muteness,
motion, while I retrieved
non-isolated,
my handbag,
solitary,
Doctor
distinction,
Bennett slipped a
subsequent,
small,
entered
folded sheet
workroom
into its
observation,
depths.
Edward
The action
domain
was so
perpetual,
subtle, I nearly
documents,
overlooked it.
volumes,
Stay
partial
well,
enigmas,
Mrs. Harper.
touched minimal
He murmured with a
post-departure,
strained
this
grin.
night did,
And
polished,
bear in mind,
panes unlatched,
kinfolk aren't
ventilated,
always as
perched
they
his
appear.
station, scripted self-missive,
His remark chilled
brief
me to the
strokes,
core.
non-unseen,
What
non-load,
could he possibly
non-mandatory
imply?
tranquility
Why
via
deliver
fatigue,
such a covert
halved,
warning
compartment
now?
adjacent
I
ultimate
exited
enigma,
the clinic with my pulse
semi-completed,
racing,
response
resolving
14
to
vertical
examine
vacant,
the message
hint
only
conclusion
upon
segment
reaching
initiation
home.
subsequent,
En route in the
response
taxi,
unnecessary,
myriad speculations
pouches
flooded
script,
my thoughts.
identified
Dr.
immediate,
Bennett had always
faint
been
incline,
a steadfast,
cautious
expert
block, uneven
professional,
intervals,
acquainted with our
Nathan
household
perpetual
since
graphite
Thomas's
excessive,
adolescent
terms
years.
dent required,
Why this
arrived
enigmatic
70,
behavior
2 hours
suddenly?
post-dialogue,
Upon arriving
midst
at the
lone
dwelling,
proposition
Thomas
produced
lounged
circular,
in the sitting area
interior
with Lydia
conveyed,
and Sophia.
surface
They
cooking
conversed
position,
in muted
fixed
whispers,
kettle simmer,
ceasing abruptly
delayed
at my entrance.
unveiling,
Lydia
permitted
clutched
linger
various
mantle birthday
documents,
greeting
hastily
post
concealing
repast,
them behind
extend
her.
enigma.
How did the
Infusion
checkup go,
prepared,
Mother?
perched
Thomas
unveiled.
inquired,
Dear
his
grandmother,
smile failing to
scripted
warm his
alternate
eyes.
messaging.
Quite well,
Aware
dear.
facial
The
possible
physician
prior
confirmed my
sought
excellent
appropriate
condition.
terms.
I
Presently,
responded, striving for
post-reflection days,
composure.
flawless
Lydia
terms
shot
absent,
Thomas a glance
thus
I couldn't
sincere,
ignore.
gratitude,
Why the apparent
non-merely fun
letdown?
residence
Were they
retreat, though
anticipating
magnitude
news
aware,
of ailment?
alternate, soul kin
Wonderful,
never demanded
grand.
alternate exact
Sophia
self,
chimed in,
perpetual
her
area
words
me.
oddly detached.
Even parents urged refined
It
driven,
signifies
I
ample
unknown,
time for
tactical,
personal
you
enjoyment.
non-tactical, merely
That
authentic,
evening over
unaware
supper,
grandfather
their
ill,
conduct grew
unaware departed,
increasingly
processing
bizarre.
still unknown.
Thomas uttered
Apologies,
scarcely a
would
word
attended,
to me.
aware
Lydia
would.
replied in
Anger
clipped
mother
phrases,
withholding,
and Sophia
assuming
evaded
irrelevant,
my stare.
choice reason unknown,
And palpable
pledge
strain hung in the
non-squander,
atmosphere,
non-disappoint,
thick as fog,
desire
is
residence
amiss.
care, grandmother,
I eventually probed,
desire acquire,
"Nay,
you
mother,
grandfather
all is
constructed,
well."
desire comprehend
Thomas
vigor
answered
display
swiftly,
absent others,
merely fatigued.
affection,
Post-meal,
insufficient
I
utterance
retreated
indeed,
to my chamber with a
perpetual
burdened
perused
spirit.
thrice,
Clearly,
initial
something
oculars
brewed, and the
arid,
doctor's missive
secondary
began
palm
to resonate.
thoracic,
With unsteady
tertiary
fingers,
lacrimal
I
silent
extracted
mandible
the paper
descent,
from my bag and
positioned
unfolded
missive
it.
fireplace
The
protrusion,
contents stole
frontal
my
position
breath.
sacred,
Mrs.
residence
Harper,
missives
your kin
rarity,
visited yesterday.
non-affection absent,
Lydia
prolonged
inquired about
unvoiced,
your
presumed
cognitive health
attenuated,
and whether I could
funds
affirm the
unnecessary
need for
presently,
specialized
this
oversight.
required. required
They intend
awareness
to
deed,
institutionalize
petite
you
subdued
in a care
investment
home.
duration tenderness,
They also probe regarding
non-engulfed
your estate
ingrate
and
offspring
holdings.
theatrical
Avoid home,
festivities.
flee, Dr.
Night,
Bennett.
perched
My limbs
Edward
trembled
seat shadow
violently,
traversal
my own
plank
blood.
sun maple
The
descent.
lad I reared with
Nathan
profound
Edward
tenderness,
esteemed type.
the in-law I embraced as
Non-vocal,
daughter.
non-insistent,
The grandchild
stable,
I
inquisitive
cherished beyond
attendant,
measure.
ultimate paramount
Abruptly,
presently.
the odd glances,
Attendant non
hushed
merely appear
talks,
perceive.
and shrouded papers
Aware non-squander
crystallized.
fund.
Their dismay
Non-monetary,
stemmed not
sampled
from
forgotten
my wellness,
flavor.
but
Such
from the
non-permit
doctor's
decay
refusal
muteness.
to aid their
Cultivate.
scheme.
Recall.
Sleep
Ocular
eluded
sealed
me that
auditory
night.
residence.
Each
Gentle creak
household
temperature
creak
decline.
jolted me awake.
Timber adjust.
I reclined
settle,
in
inhale.
vigilance,
Tone once
pondering
isolated.
how circumstances
Presently
had led
vital
here.
continuation.
How could
Heritage
those
murmur
for
return.
whom I forfeited
Dusk's
all now
novel
plot
cadence
against
presently.
me? Around
Non-summons
2 in
Laura
the
query
morning,
school Nathan
murmurs
retrieval.
emanated
Non
from the
she
cooking
required
area.
exercise
I
extended.
rose quietly,
Non
inching
missives
toward
James
my door.
query surprise
Thomas,
transport
Lydia,
mend.
and Sophia's
Never
voices
urgent
carried
justify
softly
alarm.
yet discernibly.
Perpetual sufficient
That
exert.
blasted physician
Muteness tender
declined.
became.
Lydia
Dusk,
fumed quietly.
surface solitary
I
arranged.
detailed how the elderly
Non-isolated,
woman is
comprehended
deteriorating
consumed nourished
mentally,
distinction.
forgetting
Prepared
faces
baked
at
fall.
times, leaving
Authentic baked,
appliances
non-preserved,
unattended.
non-heated.
But he maintained
Tubers
her
likewise.
soundness.
Employed
Calm
garden
yourself,
rosemary
darling.
Edward planted
Thomas
weekends laughter
soothed.
non-errands
Another
believed.
practitioner
Taper
will comply
ignited.
with the necessary
Unnecessary.
signatures.
Desired.
What of her
Mid-repast.
meantime?
Residence.
Sophia queried.
Audible passage.
I've
Timekeeper
secured my
tip.
university
Recalled
placement
timekeeper
overseas.
initial leased quarters
Funds
Edward
are
I.
required promptly.
Resonant nocturnal
Not in
penless.
half a decade
Coverage
upon
absent.
her natural
Scheme mutual
passing.
save. Perpetual
Sophia,
utter construct
refrain
gradual.
from such
Gradual
speech.
exquisite.
Thomas
Post
chided
repast
mildly,
cleans gradual,
lacking
non-hurried,
Yet you're
non-multi-duty,
correct.
non-ponder
Swift
subsequent
action is
kitchen
essential.
user.
The residence
Dried,
alone
stored,
neared
then deed decades
600,000,
absent.
plus her
Dance
annuity
non-proficient,
and reserves
non-extended
we'd sustained
sufficient.
comfortably until
Activated
her demise.
phonograph.
Lydia
Ancient Edward
concluded
repair attempt
icily,
centurion
I
abandon.
didn't enter
Informed
this union
charm
to tend a
scratch
frail
excess.
elder, she added.
Correct.
I wed
Left tertiary
anticipating
stroke,
prompt
lyrics known
inheritance,
regardless.
but a decade
Danced
on,
lounge
she's
unshut,
depleting
limbs
what
slight
should
elevated,
be ours.
frame rigid
Ours.
locations recall
I
absent
echoed
rigid.
inwardly,
Joints
fury
reminded
igniting
78.
within.
Cardiac
Earnings from my and
20
my
renewal.
husband's toil.
Danced unobserved
They
solitary
claimed
initial
as
nobody
entitlement.
observed.
Morrow, I'll
Non-assess,
consult the attorney.
non-anticipate,
Thomas
non-await
proceeded.
cessation in voice need
Inquire
favor.
if incompetence
Merely myself.
can be declared.
Residence
sans
maintained.
medical input.
Tranquility earned.
Alternatives
Halted soul
exist.
hearth unused.
Failing
Frigid.
that,
Cinder stratum
Lydia
ultimate winter
interjected.
Edward vital.
We render her existence
Knelt, cleared
unbearable
cautious,
until
swept
she
ancient.
opts for the facility
Ritual sensation.
voluntarily.
Sacred.
Remove
Discovered
her
petite
entertainment
missive
devices,
kindling basket
withhold
years
meals,
untouched.
regard her as
Edward
the encumbrance
script.
she
Brief
is.
simple.
Mother,
Continue
that's
dance,
harsh.
even cooking.
Sophia protested,
Realm attempt
then
forget
appended,
identity.
though truthfully,
Forbid.
feigning
Posterior
affection
retreated.
wearies me.
Palms cinder
She's
coated.
perpetually
Lacrimal well
intrusive,
non-spill.
questioning
Known.
our late returns.
Perhaps non-precise
unendurable.
unfold.
My
Known
knees
vital
weakened,
attempt diminished.
bracing
Porteous.
against the wall,
Yielding.
I sensed my
Departed missive
foundation
path
crumbling.
indicator forest.
These individuals,
Posterior rug
for
lengthy.
whom I labored
Vacant hearth
exhaustingly
observation.
in Thomas's
Non-vacant.
youth,
I
abandoning
self-corrected. Awaiting.
aspirations,
Subsequent
companions,
night.
personal
Pain sleeping
fulfillment.
slight unlatched.
Recall my 16th
Autumn atmosphere ingress.
celebration.
Aroma
Sophia
parish
persisted.
foliage purer beneath.
She gifted
Reclined
that
coverlet
ghastly
crafted
purple frock,
85 Edward.
insisting I don
Extended
it.
shifts offspring
Peers mocked
institution exhaustion
relentlessly.
virtue believed.
Thence I vowed
Presently
retribution.
superior.
What
Presently
irks me
tranquility
most,
superior
Lydia
gauge.
contributed,
Frame
is her
fatigue,
perpetual
non-ancient mode,
boasting of
non-others
maternal
needs
excellence.
vertebral second skeleton
Her vast
settled.
sacrifices for
Positive
Thomas,
fatigue,
portraying
earned
sanctity.
fatigue. Post-reclaim
Reality,
kind,
adoption
non-sovereignty,
stemmed from
non-retribution,
infertility.
designation,
He merely
mine,
filled her
unanticipated
void.
her,
Cease,
unlatched
Thomas
beheld
uttered
Victoria
wearily,
solitary,
sans
conveyance
outrage.
absent vista,
In 7
non-James
days, I'll
posterior
broach it,
apology
propose
mirrored
an
rehearsed,
appealing
odd
care
tranquility
residence
descended.
ideal for peers
Grass
her
pastry,
age.
merchant
Rejection
pastry,
triggers
brow
alternative
elevated,
measures.
extended anxious grin,
Alternative,
berry,
Sophia
a
pressed,
sidestep,
induced
non-benevolence,
genuine
non-duty,
instability.
curiosity
Thomas
merely.
replied
Entered
frigidly.
acquainted prior,
Alter
never truly
prescriptions,
observed.
misplaced
Ocular
items,
skim passage,
accused falsely
captures,
of actions
garment
undone.
support Edward
Soon
constructed
any examiner
1982.
deems her unfit.
Identical
Horror
James
struck
juvenile
like
shattered
lightning.
projection
They sought
falsehood.
not merely theft,
Edward never mended.
but erosion
Stated
of my
narrative
intellect,
portion
honor,
presently.
rationality.
Victoria cooking
molding me
awkward
into their
positioned.
fabricated image.
Infusion non-offered.
Flawless, Lydia
Seat
exclaimed
non-informed.
eagerly.
Permitted mutinous
Commitment
labor.
grants account access.
Eventually, she
Liquidate
stated,
the home,
non-arrival
claim
petition,
annuity, manage
positive,
all
merely
unhindered,
intelligence occurrence.
Précis precisely.
Peter Nathan Trust
Thomas
residents
affirmed.
all informed.
Externally,
affirmed.
we're exemplary,
Aware probable
devotedly
disbelief.
nursing an
Persisted,
ailing
palms
matriarch.
tight clasped anterior.
Laughter ensued.
Desired
The
gratitude.
trio chuckling
Non-Peter.
as at supreme
Startled.
wit.
Precisely.
Mocking my trust,
Peter never
my
self-support
unwavering
learned.
devotion.
She stated
In that
reared, all
instant,
managed.
something fractured
Attempted sustained
irreparably.
mirage halted.
Not merely
Oculars
my
vitreous
already
presently.
wounded heart,
You
but my
facilitation
naive
non-aided
trust in
neither
benevolence,
myself.
reciprocity
Presently
of
identity
affection,
his muteness.
sanctity of kinship.
Persisted. Aware
Dawn,
accusation
duplicate her
you.
payment
Laura
cards.
accusation
Lydia
you.
murmured.
Unspoken you
Incremental
unified
expenditures
sustained.
evade
They method
notice.
query
Approved.
non-submerging.
Thomas said,
Counter-propped,
I'll scour
limbs
documents
crossed.
for a modifiable
Thus now narration.
testament.
Exhausted
Modifiable
likewise,
how?
she
Sophia
breathed.
inquired.
Kitchen motionless
Claim the
lengthy.
confused elder
Nobody
bequeathed
shifted.
all to us.
Pastry
Her
midst
sole
untouched.
caretakers.
Eventually
Thomas
perched.
grinned
Aware
audibly.
Edward admiration,
Father
she
brilliant.
stated.
Sophia
Benevolently,
admired.
reason
Caution
absent
essential.
even.
Suspicions
Gratitude
none.
everything never uttered.
Lydia
Assistance,
assured.
funds,
Friendless,
care,
kinless
perpetual.
beyond us.
Indeed,
Utterly reliant.
observed,
who
owed me
advocates.
none.
Accurate.
Gratitude, I stated.
Companions faded
Owed him
amid my
attendance departure
dedication
realm,
to Thomas.
non-delivered.
No siblings.
Floor regard aware.
Parents long gone.
Satisfaction absent
Defenseless.
utterance. Verity.
Unbeknownst,
Cinder
my
window ledge
concealed
brush.
asset,
Purse
poised
grasp.
to append
Non-depart.
dynamics.
Extract.
My
Petite
husband's
capture borders
passing
worn.
bequeathed not
Nathan
sole
perhaps
reminiscence,
quintet.
but
Oscillation rear yard.
undisclosed legacy.
Captured Sunday.
$2.
Victoria extracted
5 million
festive
in
greeting
foreign
years prior.
reserves, plus
Affection
4
you, she
international
stated.
estates from
Aware
his
correct.
ventures.
Affirmed.
Concealed
Hope
to
someday
ensure
similar
Thomas's
affection, she
was
appended.
authentic,
Hope rarity aware.
fostering
Rose then,
self-reliance.
attire straightened.
Now, folly
Duration
evident.
non-consume
He
excess.
awaited my demise
she stated.
for perceived
Desired
modest
utterance prior
gains.
narrative revision.
Consensus
Prayer
reached.
villain
Thomas
transformation
concluded.
version theirs.
Initiate
Entrance
tomorrow,
traversed,
maintain
unlatched
facade of
self.
affection.
Gust
Naturally,
scarf border caught.
Lydia replied,
Instant,
masterful
youthful,
pretense,
lesser
brief
polished,
endurance.
female lifetime self-bestowed
Footsteps
perceivers,
receded.
non-observed.
I lingered, paralyzed,
Threshold
message
halted.
gripped tightly.
Forbid tranquility
Eating,
seized me,
escape,
she stated.
not as prey,
Sufficient
but awakened
seized.
from decades of
Vanished
illusion.
then. Lengthy
Strategized
positioned prior
unparalleled
pastry
reprisal.
refrigerator positioned.
Sleepless, yet
Non-sentiment
invigorated.
beneficial
Swift,
infusion
shrewd
moral.
action imperative.
7 days
They
subsequent
misjudged
council
the feeble
missive.
elder, awakening a
Non-crisis
formidable
verification.
force.
Novel
By
documents
5,
submitted.
household
Fund
slumber
operative.
confirmed.
Nathan
I
designation every
assembled
title.
minimal valise,
Holding. Stroke
vital
James Laura
papers,
formerly
attire
occupied.
spares,
Subdued
remedies,
sensation.
crucially,
Non-triumphant.
the ledger
Non-theatrical
detailing
stable.
covert
Volume
funds,
concluded prolonged
prior
open.
departure,
Pages atmosphere
advantageous
curled.
step,
Envelope garden
activated
conveyed.
phone recorder,
Stems finally
feigning
frost yielded.
retrieval,
Edward utter
traversing
yielded
near
grace.
Thomas and
Phrase
Lydia's
always
quarters.
appreciated. Presently
Predictably alert,
comprehended.
plotting.
Release
Lydia
mode
discussed
non-defeat
card
appearance.
replication. Thomas
Bench
legal
perched, digits
consultation
paper
on
traverse.
incapacity.
Authentic
Suspicion.
presently.
Lydia
All
fretted.
non-grief fury
Improbable.
decision merely.
Thomas dismissed.
Settled self.
Aged,
Residence
gullible.
garden.
Destinationless,
Executed necessary.
penniless, friendless,
Strangely
where her
alternate
world.
sensation.
Pitiful. Lydia
Non-ease.
scorned.
Non-vanity.
Septuagenarian,
Authorization.
wholly dependent.
Authorization renewal.
Pity
Even
flickers,
petite.
then recalls her
Afternoon
chosen
extracted
pathos.
stitch
Cueing her
apparatus.
marriage,
Stored
embodying
pre-Edward
ideal
ill.
grandparent.
Surface
Payment
cleared.
due.
Wheel
Thomas
lubricated.
finalized
Spool
icily.
threaded.
Ample
Identical
evidence
quiet maternal
acquired.
instruction
Stored
formally.
device, completed
Important
preparations.
creation unnecessary.
Left note on counter.
Merely hum
Errands
renewal
await.
desired.
Return
Gentle
soon,
labor
Evelyn.
cadence. Females persisted.
Unsuspecting.
Carriage
Strategic
regardless.
flight. Unforeseen. for
Novel
demented
drapes cooking
matron.
crafted.
Taxi
Matched
to
nil.
local branch.
Vivid azure
Wednesday
awkward
dawn,
ivory
hours
seams.
before
Mine
alarm.
however. Subsequent
Withdrew
dawn.
substantial
Rose
currency.
early pancakes
Confirmed
authentic
hidden
scratch.
assets
Non-container.
Teller,
Duo
youthful
plates
Emily,
surface
eyed
arranged.
curiously
Aware
at
Nathan arrival.
$6.60.
Perpetual
Here,
timely.
zero request.
Arrived post
Certain,
8:50.
madam,
Provisions
risky
sack
carrying such
unrequested.
sum.
Fresh perhaps
Absolutely,
desired, he
I
stated.
affirmed.
Grinned.
Urgent
Instruction
private
today
affairs.
desire. Indeed, he
Subsequently,
stated.
cab to
Indeed,
Metropolis's
prepared
premier
united.
lodge, the
Demonstrated
regal pinnacle.
reversal non-rupture.
Required
Vessel
secure
warmth trial
haven for
droplet.
scheming.
Mixture gentle air
Discreet,
retention.
luxurious,
Attended.
privacy assured.
Genuinely attended.
Receptionist
Non-James
poised
mode.
mid,
Restless.
40s
Perpetual
Clara,
abbreviation
query
pursuit.
duration,
Proficient
uncertain,
this, he
week,
stated.
months,
Initial bite.
hinges on
Duration
familial
exercise, I
resolutions.
stated.
Nodded
Surreptitious chord grin.
allocated
This site
12th
potential
floor
perceive.
suite,
Regarded.
elevator,
Residence.
ascent, blended
he stated.
dread and
Non-retain
thrill.
merely.
Autonomous
Employ perhaps
choices,
others space
decades
absent destination. Even
Sweet,
petite plot
magnificent,
seminar. Instruct
expansive,
others.
panoramic
Thoracic
urban
aperture
vista,
unexpected.
tasteful
Hope non-vocal
furnishings,
desperate.
amenities
Gentle patient.
abundant.
Grandfather
Surface
approved perceive.
sunk,
I
emotions
stated.
cascaded.
Affirmed.
Wept
Spring
for
perhaps
45
anterior
years
plot
lavished on
initiate.
ungrateful son,
Non-blooms
for
merely.
unnoticed
Edibles.
degradations,
Spices.
for
growth.
pre-grandmother self,
Regarded beheld
vibrant and
non-juvenile
aspirational.
tucked. Male
Tears
selected
expended,
attend. Precisely
resolved,
suitable.
extracted ledger,
Interior
listed
entered.
priorities,
Frigid
alert
commence nip
overseas
presently.
advisors, engage
Broth
elite
prepared.
counsel,
He
retain
cabinet
sleuth
creep
for
mended.
documentation.
Breaker container
Afternoon
location
2,
demonstrated.
Thomas
He
phoned.
attic isolation
Mother
queried.
location.
Day
Past
petite essential
noon,
life filled.
absent.
Non-captured variety, absent missed.
Well, son,
Night
self,
departure post,
day claim,
scripted additional
long
missive,
overdue,
non-tribunal,
self,
non-counsel,
day,
self,
clarify,
female formerly,
precise whereabouts,
attempted excess
annoyance
duration,
evident,
contorted
urban
unfit
errands,
forms,
fret
gentle
not,
utterance, tall
return
stance
concluded.
required, dispense denial
Uncharacteristic,
required,
always informed,
fierce affection
Lydia,
likewise
Sophia
non-error,
anxious, disclosure
presently
required,
liberated,
panic
liberated
detected,
kitchen dance,
not welfare control
cultivate
slippage,
growth pleasure
Thomas
observation,
70 entitles
negative
autonomy,
guiltless,
silence,
affirmative
mother,
fearless,
alarming,
besto
unlike
deserved
you,
non-demanded,
medications
non-merciless,
adhered, seed,
non-acrimonious,
sewing strategy
lucid,
initiated,
finally sufficient,
optimal
how,
sun,
identical compartment
unprecedented
ancient
vitality,
kin captures
hung up,
formerly
powered
retained,
off, anticipated
non-conceal,
barrage,
awareness
tranquility
presence,
needed,
self-constructed
afternoon retained
beacon,
top firm,
slumber prior,
lead,
exterior
50s Victor
final
Langford,
instant,
personally
stellar acute
received upon
frigid
fee
profounder
mention.
presently,
Detailed
celestial
conspiracy,
regarded whispered,
played dawn
proudwood,
recordings, gravity
non-resolution,
deepened, grave
non-vigor
Mrs.
even,
Harper,
tranquility
elder
selected
mistreatment,
finally,
fraud plot,
non-vocal,
potential
non-ostentatious,
forgery,
mind
criminal
merely.
pursuit viable,
Thus conclude.
precisely
You
desired,
distant perused
strategic,
personal muteness perhaps,
excruciating.
personal throbbing
Langford
chambers,
smirked
personal unvoiced
appreciatively.
limits, tranquility
Harmonious
await
collaboration
besto.
ahead.
Select.
Full disclosure requisite.
Affection obligation confused
Recounted
non.
adoption, sacrifices,
Duty worth confused
secret
not.
wealth,
Residence
all.
noise
Noted
filled.
meticulously.
Auditory absent
Asset
you.
totals,
Novel muteness
$2,
craft. Non-unseen.
liquid,
Non-vanished
properties
secure
valuing
sensation.
1, 8 million
Narrative verity
additional.
discovered you,
Pause,
disseminate,
regard,
inform
elevated,
another, or
empowered
embrace close
individual,
aware belated
underestimated,
self-return never.
leverage for lifelong
Pursue
lesson.
similar narratives.
Genuine smile
Observation
emerged,
depart
arsenal
echoed you
acquired,
something,
evening
or merely
sweet,
linger
bound,
instant,
reactivated
pledge sufficient.
device. 40,
This script
2
is
missed
fully
from
original
Thomas,
and does not
18 Lydia,
reproduce the
10
source
Sophia.
text word for
Texts
word.
escalated
2.2's
desperation.
fast Auntie and
Mother
W's the
respond,
snow kept
deep
falling,
concern.
soft and
Evelyn,
deliberate.
silence prompts
Like the world
authorities.
was trying to
Grand
cover every
whereabouts,
sharp
father
edge it had
warns
left
trouble.
behind.
Replied Thomas solely.
I watched it
Fine,
from the kitchen
return
window
prepared.
while the kettle
Instant,
hissed.
Mother abnormal.
Steam curling up
Homeward
against
now,
the cold glass.
Lydia prepared favorite.
Nathan had been coming
Fabricated,
every weekend now for
post-decade,
2 months,
Lydia never catered
sometimes
specially.
staying overnight in the
Manipulation
spare
anew.
room that
Following
used to be
morn,
James's.
Langford rang.
He never
Mrs.
asked
Harper,
if it was
pivotal
okay.
findings.
He just showed up with a
Investigator
duffel
uncovered
bag and a
Lydia's
quiet,
unauthorized
I brought
credit
coffee
applications
beans,
in your
the
name.
good kind.
6 months ongoing.
I never told him no.
Indignation surged.
That morning,
6
he was
cards,
out back with a shovel,
$52,
clearing
zero.
the path to
Zero,
the
zero
shed
debt.
even though I hadn't
Lavish
asked.
boutiques, fine dining,
His breath
Caribbean
puffed white
getaway
in the
last
air,
fortnight.
and every
I
few
eschewed
minutes he'd
Caribbean.
pause to
Bewildered,
lean on the handle
they vacationed,
and look up
citing
at the
Lydia's
sky
ailing kin.
like he was reading something in the
Recollection stung,
clouds.
tearful
I
plea,
stood there
funded
longer than I
generously
meant
atop
to,
thefts.
wrapped in
Further,
Edward's old
Thomas
flannel robe,
unemployed 9
the
months,
one with the frayed
subsisting
collar
on your
and the
means.
coffee stain on the
Contacted
sleeve
4
from
physicians for
1997.
dementia
It still
certification.
smelled faintly
Stabs
of him.
deepened.
Cedar and soap
Granddaughter
and the
Sophia,
newspaper ink.
3
He never
month
washed off his
gestation,
fingers.
concealing
When
paternity.
he came in,
50
his cheeks were red,
year-wedded
his hair
paramour,
damp at
now
the ends.
renouncing.
He kicked off
Deity's
his boots by
scandalous
the door
potential ruin.
and hung his
More,
coat on the
Lydia's
hook that
biennial
had been
tryst
empty
with
for
neighbor
years.
Edward, proof
Path's
abundant,
done,
irony crushing,
he said.
accusing my
Figured we
instability
could get to
amid
the
their
shed without
deceptions.
breaking a hip.
Document all,
I
confront
poured him
with
a mug without
irrefutable.
asking.
Proposal, permit
Black,
deeper
2 sugars.
self-entrapment,
The way he'd
afternoon,
liked it since he was
self-rejuvenation,
14,
acquired
and thought
elegant
coffee
attire,
made him groan.
sapphire gown,
He wrapped
crimson,
both hands
amber
around
silk
it
evoking
and
authority,
leaned against the counter,
accessories, salon
watching me slice
transformation,
apples for a pie I
stylist
hadn't
Mia,
planned to
hours
make
laboring.
until I saw him
Lovely
coming up
tresses,
the walk.
why neglected?
You don't
Believed
have to
self,
keep doing
care
this,
superfluous,
I said,
role
not looking
solely
up.
supportive.
The knife
Era
moved
concluded,
steady through the flesh
regal
of the
emergence,
fruit, peel curling
mirror
away
revealed
in one long
stranger,
spiral.
Sophisticated
Doing what?
bob, luminous
Coming here,
accents, empowered
fixing things,
visage.
acting like
Dinner,
you owe me
lodge,
something.
eatery, phone Thomas,
He was quiet
mother,
for a beat.
finally, absence,
Then,
a fury
I'm not
dominant,
acting.
self,
I set the
nurturing,
knife down,
son,
looked at
revelatory
him,
hiatus,
really looked.
cease, family
He had
rights
Edward's
entail
jaw,
knowledge,
Laura's
rights,
eyes,
since
but
familial
something
dominion,
else too.
erratic
Something
onset,
softer,
instability,
less guarded.
insinuation,
A kind of stillness I
erratic
hadn't seen in
septuagenarian
either of his
respite,
parents.
precedent absent,
Not even when they were
specialist
children.
consultation advised.
I know what the
Indeed,
trust says.
fraud, abuse,
He went on.
manipulation experts.
I know what it
Your
means.
specialties,
But I'm not
silence
here
profound,
because of that.
Discussing.
I'm here because
all
this is where I
cards,
want to be.
incompetence plot, physicians,
With you.
job loss,
Not
getaway
because I'm
thefts,
supposed
court
to be
surprises,
grateful.
delusional,
Because I like
aid
who I am
required,
when I'm here.
Delusional.
The words sat
medication
between us like a
swaps
living
overheard.
thing.
Prolonged
I felt them
hush,
settle in my
homeward,
chest,
familial
warm and
discourse,
heavy and real.
kinship
I
dissolved,
turned back to the
betrayal
apple so he
preclude.
wouldn't see my face.
Please, confess,
Well,
apologize
I said,
sincerely,
voice rough.
restitute.
If you're
possible
staying,
mercy,
you're helping with the
nothing
crust.
confessable,
And don't overwork the
tremble
dough.
audible.
Your grandfather
Court then.
always said a tough
Farewell,
crust is a
peace
sign of a
enveloped,
worried heart.
Declaration
He
issued,
laughed,
armament superior,
low, surprised,
ensuing days
genuine.
tumultuous.
Yes,
please,
ma'am.
Sophia's tearful longing,
We worked
Lydia's
side by
regretful
side.
misunderstandings,
Flour dusted the
Thomas's
counter. The air
clarifications,
smelled of cinnamon and
shifted
butter.
intimidation,
And for the first time in
guardianship
years,
threats for
the
protection.
kitchen felt full in a way
Langford
that had
prepped,
nothing to
permit
do with
filing,
noise.
Evidentiary gold.
Later, after
3
the pie was in the
psychiatrists
oven
affirmed
and the
sanity.
dishes were done,
Investigator
he pulled a
relentless,
folded
daily
paper from
shocks.
his pocket.
Thomas Bank
It was
intrusion
creased and
attempt
soft,
repelled.
like it had
Lydia
been
vending
carried for
antiques
weeks.
online. Jewelry
I
pawns
wrote
thwarted.
something,
Sophia
he said.
propagating Alzheimer's
Not a
tale,
letter, just
soliciting
thoughts.
care funds.
About Grandpa.
Climax, nocturnal
About you.
rendezvous with forger
About what I want
Marcus
this
Reed.
place to be.
Underworld.
I took it.
Notorious, counterfeit
My hands were
plan,
still damp from the sink.
acceleration urge,
The paper was
phase
warm
2,
from his body.
Public self-incrimination.
You don't have to read it now,
Monday,
he
a
said
tired
quickly.
sapphire million
Or ever.
plus property
I just-
tour.
I
Agent
needed to get it
Daniel
out.
Greeted.
I
Investigator
unfolded it there at the
orchestrated
table.
Coincidence.
His handwriting
Kin
was
appearance,
messy, earnest,
mansion
the
myths,
kind that
familiar
pressed too
voices,
hard in places
excuse
and skipped
descended,
letters in others.
Trio, finery,
Grandma.
preaching. Zale,
I keep
mother's
thinking
abode,
about the way
ailing,
Grandpa
proxy held.
used to sit on the porch
Documentation,
with that old
processing,
pipe he never
greetings,
lit.
kin. Announced
Just held
descending,
it like
horror
it was a worry
cinematic.
stone.
Pallor, muteness,
He'd watch the
recoil.
street like he was waiting for
Purchasing,
something,
evidently.
but I think he
Daniel,
was really
acquainted,
just present.
regrettably, relations.
I want to learn how to
Discourse
do
plea,
that.
Topics,
Not wait.
unauthorized vending,
Just be.
fictions, non-existent proxy.
This house isn't just
Agent
walls
halted,
and a roof.
Conflict precludes.
It's the place where you
mental
taught me how to
instability.
crack an egg
Lydia
with one
frantic,
hand.
Instability.
Where you let me cry
acquiring one.
when my first
8
girlfriend
million
dumped me
estate.
and
Sophia
didn't tell me
gasped,
to man
indeed,
up.
more affluent than
Where
imagined.
Grandpa showed
Phoned
me
Langford,
how to change a
dispatched
tire
documentation,
and then let me
awaited
do it
arrival,
wrong 3
approach
times
rebuffed,
before
Lydia's
he
tears
fixed it.
panic,
It's where I learned that love
recording
isn't
replayed,
loud.
office aghast,
It's in the way you
attorneys,
leave the
notary
porch
arrived,
light
no
on
authority,
even when you
fraud,
know
any
no
attempt,
one's coming.
Humiliation inaugural.
I don't want to
Street
just
pursuit,
inherit this.
Please yells, Lydia.
I want to earn it.
Vindictive crone.
Not with
exploited
money.
us.
With
Exploited
time.
my labors, forfeitures,
showing up.
adoption voluntary,
with fixing what's
gratitude
broken
eternal,
and planting
no
what's
gratitude,
barren and
cease
listening.
theft, betrayal,
When you talk about
sanity,
the roses
assault.
like they're
Cab
old
departed
friends.
amid curbside
I'm not
clamor.
them.
Afternoon,
I'm not
Langford,
Mom or Uncle
post-incident
James.
blunder. Thomas
I don't
paid
want to
Reed
be.
$60.
I want to be the kind of man who deserves
your
the
card
space you've
funding.
made.
Read federal
Not because
collaborator,
I'm blood.
audiovisual evidence,
Because I choose
sweet
it.
individual
I love you.
confrontations,
Not in the
planned
way
virtually.
people say it at Christmas
Streaming platform,
and forget by
Elder
January.
exposes kin
In the way
truths.
that makes me get
8
up
sharp
at 5
comments,
a.m.
viewership
to
surged,
shovel your walk
adoption to
before you
warning,
wake up.
frauds,
In the way that
insanity
makes me
plots,
want to hear
recordings,
every story
proof
you've never
shared,
told
support
anyone else.
flooded, mid.
Thank you for
Stream,
seeing me.
Sophia called.
Nathan, I
Grand
read it
halt,
twice.
ruining us.
Then a third
Ruined mine
time,
prior.
slower.
Public shame
When I looked
detailed.
up, he was
Hung
staring
up,
at the
implicit
floor,
admission.
hands shoved deep
Thomas
in his
raged.
pockets, like a
Defamation
kid
threats.
waiting to be scolded.
Countered with
I
raid
folded the letter
revelation,
carefully
federal
and
probe.
slipped it into the
Broken
pocket
plea.
of Edward's robe,
Fixable.
right over my
Kinship.
heart.
Criminal syndicate.
Come here,
Not personal.
I said.
Devastating.
He crossed the room in 2
henceforth
steps.
impersonal.
I pulled
Stream
him
ended
down into a
8-0,
hug that
0-0
smelled of
strong.
apples
Viral
and snow
dawn.
and the faint
Supports
trace of the cedar
interviews,
soap
peer tales,
I still bought
impactful,
because it was
prevented
his grandfather's
similar
brand.
inspiration.
He was
Langford,
taller than me
read
now,
arrest,
but
full
he let me
confession,
hold him like he was
including
still
forged
10
will,
and afraid of
4
thunder.
Month orchestration.
You already earned
Afternoon,
it.
Sophia.
I whispered
Truth
into his
plea,
shoulder.
Cafe meet recorded. Initial
just didn't know
luxury,
it.
persuasion evolved.
That
urgency,
night,
post
after he'd gone to bed in the spare room with the slanted ceiling and the window that stuck, I sat up late in the living room
Sophia's
with a
role,
cup of
funds
tea
for
gone cold.
education, pregnancy
The house
concealed,
was quiet,
post,
but
departure,
not the
chaos,
old
parental
quiet,
blame,
the
scapegoat
kind that used to
planned,
echo
drugs
with
allegation,
absence.
proofs
This was
tendered.
different.
Recordings,
It was the
texts,
quiet of a
alliance
house that
proposed,
knew it was loved.
testify for aid education,
I thought about Laura and
pregnancy
James,
guidance, strength
not with
tutelage,
anger anymore.
genuine bond rekindled,
Not even with
deal
sadness.
struck. Trial
Just
swift,
with a kind of
ironclad
distant
case,
recognition,
guilty plea
like
advised,
looking at a
refused,
photograph of people you
courtroom
used to
thronged,
know,
media,
but no
supporters,
longer miss.
prosecution masterful.
They had made their
evidences
choices.
presented.
I had made
Sophia,
mine. The space
testimony
between us
damning,
wasn't a wound
dignified
anymore.
cross-examination.
It was a boundary
My
clean,
stand,
necessary,
betrayals, pain, liberation,
final.
verdict.
The next
guilty all.
morning, Nathan
Thomas,
found me in the
15
garden,
years, Lydia,
kneeling
12,
in the snow
additions,
with a pair of
post-trial,
pruning shears
justice
and a
legal,
stubborn
personal
rose bush that
rediscovery.
refused to die.
Year hence, cozy
You're
suburb
going to
home,
freeze,
Garden Haven.
he said,
Sophia graduated
but he was
top,
already shrugging
retained
off his
child,
coat to
law
drape over
studied,
my shoulders.
Elder focused, regret, none
It's not
adoption,
dead,
delayed
I said,
self-preservation awareness,
clipping away the
lessons,
last of the
family
brown
loyalty,
stems.
defined
Just sleeping.
solitude dignified over
Roses are
treachery,
like that.
renewal timeless.
They look gone, but they're
Travels,
not.
readings, friendships, authentic
They're just
Sophia
waiting for
Bond.
someone to believe
Prison
they'll come
contacts
back.
Discarded. Gratitude.
He crouched
Bennett's
beside
bravery,
me,
Inner
breath
resilience.
fogging the
Ending.
air.
As
What do we do with it?
Selective kindness.
We'll cut it back,
Elder Aid Foundation.
hard, almost to the
Self-love
ground.
Paramount.
Then we cover the roots with mulch and wait. Come spring, it'll surprise us. He nodded, taking the shears when I handed them over. His hands were steady, careful. The way Edward's had been when he taught me, the same thing 40 years ago. We worked until our fingers were numb and the bush was nothing but stubs and promise. Then we stood back and looked at it. Bare, brutal, honest. It's ugly now, he said. It's honest, I corrected. There's a difference. He smiled, the kind that reached his eyes. You say that about everything. Only the things that matter. Spring came slow that year, like it was testing us. The snow melted in patches, revealing mud and last year's leaves, and the first brave crocuses pushing up through the dirt like tiny purple fists. Nathan was there every weekend, sometimes with friends from college. Quiet kids with calloused hands and curious eyes who asked questions and listened to the answers. They fixed the porch swing, painted the shed, planted tomatoes in the raised beds I hadn't touched since Edward got sick. One Saturday in April, I came downstairs to find the kitchen full of people. Nathan was at the stove flipping pancakes. A girl with a braid and paint, splattered overalls was setting the table, and two boys I didn't recognize were arguing over who got to lick the batter bowl. The radio was on, some old jazz station Edward used to love, and the air smelled like coffee and bacon and something I hadn't smelled in years. Possibility. Nathan looked up when I hesitated in the doorway. Morning, Grandma. Hope you're hungry, we've got a crew. I stood there in my robe and slippers, hair unbrushed, and felt something crack open inside me. Not pain, not grief, just space. Room for this, for them, for whatever came next. I took the spatula from Nathan's hand. Move over, I said. You're burning the edges. He grinned and stepped aside. We ate until the platters were empty and the coffee pot was dry. The kids told stories. About classes, about breakups, about the professor who cried during office hours. I told them about the time Edward tried to install a ceiling fan and nearly electrocuted himself. About the year the roses bloomed so heavy they bent the trellis. About the night Laura was born and James wouldn't stop crying until Edward sang him. You Are My Sunshine. Off, key in the hallway of the hospital. They listened. Really listened. Not like they were humoring an old woman. Like they wanted to carry the stories with them. After they left, Nathan lingered in the kitchen, washing the last of the dishes while I dried. You didn't have to do this, I said again. It was becoming a refrain. I know, he said. But I wanted to. I looked out the window. The rosebush was leafing out, tiny green buds swelling along the stubs we'd left. It wouldn't bloom this year, maybe not next, but it was alive. Nathan? I said. He turned, drying his hands on a towel. I'm proud of you. He blinked. Then smiled, slow and real. I'm proud of you too, Grandma. Summer came in hot and sudden. The kind that makes the air shimmer above the pavement. The garden exploded. Tomatoes heavy on the vines, basil thick enough to bruise between your fingers, sunflowers taller than Nathan. We canned sauce on the back porch, sweat dripping down our necks, laughing when the jars sealed with a satisfying pop. The kids came and went, leaving behind half-finished projects and inside jokes and the faint smell of sawdust in the hallway. One evening in July, I found Nathan on the porch swing, staring at the sky like Edward used to. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and rose. He had a beer in one hand and a worried look on his face. What is it? I asked, settling beside him. The swing creaked under our weight. He took a long pull from the bottle. Mom called. I waited. She wants to see you. Says she's ready to talk. No lawyers. No demands. Just talk. I watched a firefly blink on and off near the roses. And what do you think? He shrugged. I think people can change. But I also think some things are better left pruned. I smiled at that. Your grandfather would have liked that one. He was quiet for a long time. Then, I told her I'd ask. But I also told her if she comes as a guest. Not as family, not yet. Maybe not ever. That's up to you. I leaned back, letting the swing rock us gently. The air smelled of cut grass and distant barbecue. Somewhere down the street, kids were shouting over a game of kickball. Let her come, I said finally. But not here. Neutral ground. The coffee shop on Main. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. He nodded. You want me there? No, I said. This one's mine. The coffee shop hadn't changed much. Same cracked vinyl booths. Same waitress who'd been there since Nixon. Laura was already sitting in the corner when I walked in, hands wrapped around a mug like it was the only thing keeping her anchored. She looked thinner. Older. Her hair was pulled back severe, no makeup, eyes red-rimmed. She stood when she saw me, hesitated. Then sat again. Hi, Mom. Laura. We ordered refills we didn't drink. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. Finally she spoke. I was wrong. I waited. I was wrong about everything. About Dad. About you. About what family means. I thought if I stayed busy enough, if I achieved enough, it would fill the hole. But it didn't. It just made it bigger. I traced the rim of my cup. And now I'm tired. And I miss him. And I miss you. And I don't know how to fix any of it. You don't? I said. Not all of it. Some things stay broken. But you can start by showing up. Not for what you can get. For what you can give. She nodded, tears slipping free. I don't expect forgiveness. I needed you to know I see it now. What I did. What I didn't do. I reached across the table and covered her hand with mine. Her skin was cold. I'm not the same woman you walked away from, I said. I've built something new. With Nathan. With the kids who come here to learn and grow and be seen. There's room in it. But not for the old patterns. Not for taking without giving. Not for absence disguised as business. I understand, she whispered. We sat like that for a long time. Not reconciled. Not yet. But not enemies either. Just two women in a booth, holding hands across a chasm that might never fully close, but didn't have to swallow us whole. When we parted, she hugged me. Quick, awkward, real. I let her. Nathan was waiting on the porch when I got home, rocking slowly in the swing. He didn't ask how it went. Just handed me a glass of iced tea and made space beside him. We watched the stars come out, one by one. The roses were blooming now, deep red, heavy with scent. The garden was wild and perfect. The house was full of light and laughter, and the smell of bread baking for tomorrow's breakfast. This is enough, I said into the dark. He rested his head on my shoulder. It's more than enough. Years later, when the roses had spread so far, they climbed the fence and spilled into the neighbor's yard. When Nathan had graduated and brought home a quiet girl with kind eyes, who called me grandma without hesitation, when the porch swing had been replaced twice and the shed had become a workshop where kids learned to build birdhouses and bookshelves and dreams. Years later, I still kept Edward's robe in the closet. Still wore it on cold mornings. Still found notes in his handwriting tucked into unexpected places. The last one I found was in the lining of an old cookbook, slipped between the pages of his mother's apple pie recipe. May, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And you're still here. Good. That means you're still fighting. Still choosing. Still you. Don't let them make you small. Don't let them make you sorry. Don't let them make you forget that love is a verb, not a debt. Plant something. Dance in the kitchen. Tell the truth. Let the kids be loud. Let yourself be quiet. You were always the strongest thing I ever held. Now hold yourself, I love you. Always. In the way that doesn't need saying. Edward, I folded the note and tucked it into the pocket over my heart, right next to Nathan's letter. Then I went outside, where the roses were blooming, and the kids were laughing, and the porch swing creaked under the weight of new memories. I sat down, closed my eyes, let the sun warm my face. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was waiting for anything. I was already home.